Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome aboard JLR Investigates. Come on in, folks. Come on in. Come on in. We're going to talk about stolen ballots, voter fraud, and the 2024 election. There's numerous investigations all around the country right now. In just the last couple days, folks, dealing with stolen ballots, ballot harvesting, voter fraud, all types of wild things. We're talking states in Colorado, Pennsylvania, Texas, Ohio, Arizona. There's investigations being launched. 'Tis the season, folks. Less than 2 weeks away from the presidential election. We're going to talk about these stolen ballots and things going on. But I want to make this perfectly clear on JLR Investigates. We don't endorse either candidate on this channel. We don't endorse any candidate on this channel. What we do is we cover what's going on when it deals with some of these candidates, particularly the true crime aspect, right? The former president was, attempted assassination attempts multiple times on him. We covered that. Multiple threats on Kamala Harris. We covered that. Voter fraud and stolen ballots, I think, is going to be a hot topic this election season. And it seems like right now, my vision is coming into fruition, meaning these investigations and accusations and mud flinging is going all across the board. Numerous states now, including Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, just had a big press conference yesterday. We'll play that partial press conference, announcing they intercepted like 2,500 stolen ballots. In Colorado, the Secretary of State gave a long press conference yesterday talking about the whole process of these ballots that were stolen, that were intercepted, investigations being launched in the state of Texas after it's been reported that people are going into the DMV place and getting a licenses so they can register to vote. It's wild stuff. Mesa County, Arizona. There's some nuns that were accused of voter fraud in Pennsylvania, in Western Pennsylvania. Somebody went canvassing and noticed a bunch of people register the address and created a lot of controversy over that. We're going to talk all about that, voter fraud, stolen ballots, all the accusations, because I think this is a big deal, and I think it's just going to escalate. I do think in the next 2 weeks and beyond 2 weeks, beyond the results of the election, I think all the way into December and beyond, I think we're going to hear a lot about instances of voter fraud, accusations. Not saying it's true, not saying it's true whatsoever, but what we're putting out is the information that's being put out there about all these accusations. If you got these elected officials actually stepping to the plate now, not just, advocacy groups or people in general, claiming that, there's possible voter fraud going on, that's a big deal. And I think it's just going to get much, much worse, particularly in these battleground states, right? There's a few states, probably about 5 or 6 states. It's really close, the margin of error, by 50,000 votes or less. And, every vote's going to count. Every vote's supposed to count. But should there be fraudulent votes? Should there be stolen votes or stolen ballots? Should there be people impersonating other people to vote? Should people that aren't in this country legally vote? There's an argument for that, yes or no. Me and Magnolia were just talking about the issues in Ohio with the Haitian migrants who are here legally, but they're under TPS. Do people under TPS, temporary protective status, are they allowed to vote? A lot of unknowns here. Let's get into it, folks. So very first thing we're going to talk about is Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, because Lancaster County put out a big bulletin. They put a big bulletin out. The Lancaster County Board of Elections and District Attorney yesterday held a press conference. They held a press conference. And in this press conference, they talked about their voter registration applications total in these 2 batches that were submitted right at the deadline. But it's about sort of fraud or it. I'm gonna play this clip. We're not gonna get into like the whole thing, but I just want to give you examples of what's going on. And this is probably what's going to continue to go on. These elected officials or Secretary of States or even Attorney Generals might come to the plate in the next couple of weeks and keep sharing instances of voter fraud. Voter fraud. This was in Pennsylvania yesterday.
Good morning. My name is Ray D'Agostino. I am the Vice Chairman of the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners and also the Chairman of the Lancaster County Board of Elections. As we, the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Elections, have said throughout this entire election cycle and years prior, Lancaster County runs each election with the principles of integrity, veracity, and transparency. It is our duty as elected leaders of this county conduct elections that the voters can feel confident in. We take that role seriously, and so do the hardworking staff in the elections office and our volunteers. Through training and expertise, it is their work and the work of hundreds of volunteers that allows us to conduct elections that are safe, secure, and allow every eligible voter to legally cast their ballot. The staff takes seriously all the principles that I just outlined and all facets of our election, from voter registration to the publishing of results and all aspects in between. It is through their diligence that our staff uncovered apparent incidents of attempted voter registration fraud here in Lancaster County. Through the staff's normal review process, as many as 2,500 completed voter registration forms are being researched for potential fraud stemming from 2 separate drop batches by individuals. At that time, staff contacted the district attorney's office and members of the Board of Elections. Applications in these batches are going through an extensive multi-step review process, including the district attorney's office, for further investigation as warranted. This includes issues of duplicate handwriting matching other voter registration forms in the batches, inconsistent signatures with what is on the file in the SURE system, because some of these or many of these are duplicates, unverifiable and or accurate addresses, and inaccurate driver's license or social security number verification. We have an obligation under the election code, just not only that, but a moral obligation to investigate any matters of potential fraud. Applications that have gone through this extensive review and investigative process and are not deemed to be fraudulent are being processed. I want to stress this. No eligible voter will be turned away. We'll also add that the Commonwealth Department of State and the Attorney's General Office has been notified of this matter. We've called this press conference today to share this information with voters and with all the views that people can feel confident in the security of Lancaster County's elections and that we take these matters seriously. As we have said previously, and I just mentioned, elections here, we do it with integrity, veracity, and transparency. And here in Pennsylvania, elections have become more complex as we have been conducting now for at least a couple weeks 3 different types of elections simultaneously. Adding this challenging matter on top of this adds to that task. So on behalf of the board, I want to sincerely thank Krista Miller, the Chief Clerk of the Elections Board and Voter Registrations Commission, her staff and volunteers for their hard work, dedication, diligence, and perseverance, particularly in the face of recent false and misleading statements regarding aspects of their work. I also want to thank Larry George and the Board of...
So basically is they received 2,500 ballots in 2 sets of batches that were dropped off right at the deadline, and now they're being investigated for the authenticity, for the signature, the dates, the date of birth, social security numbers, everything on these ballots. But that's going to be probably what we're going to see in many jurisdictions across the country, in many counties, and someone said in the comments, if the fake ballot benefits their candidate, they're just going to count it anyway. And I kind of maybe concur with that. It depends on who runs the supervisor elections for each county. If they're an elected official on one political party side, why wouldn't they accept a ballot favorable towards their candidate? It's just a mess. I think it's ripe for corruption. Do you feel like elections are safe and secure? I'm not so sure. I don't know. I can't say with yes. I can't say for no. I don't know. I'm not so sure though, because there's just instances that just keep popping up over and over and over. Particularly dealing with ballot harvesting and mail-in ballots and the ballots itself, the ballots. It's a big mess, and I think we're gonna have to get our seatbelts and buckle up, because I think it's going to get much, much worse, especially the accusations, because you also have all these people that are incited on both sides, and they're out there canvassing, and they're out there monitoring with their cameras and their binoculars the election stations out there to make sure there's no fraud going on. And then people going to addresses and seeing people actually live at an address. It's a lot of spying and citizens stepping up, and maybe they should do that, maybe they shouldn't, I don't know, debate too, but it leads to accusations. For instance, nuns. We'll talk about some nuns. Look at these nuns. I just took a picture of some nuns. So in Western Pennsylvania, there's a big controversy because there was a incident here. It says nuns push back after GOP political activists cast doubt on their Pennsylvania registered voting registration. So this is the Benedictine Sisters of Erie. The Benedictine Sisters of Erie. That's who they're called. And there's multiple of them at an address. And a GOP guy came by the address and said, oh, no, there's a bunch of people registered at the address. It's fraud. There's voter fraud going on. It was just a bunch of nuns at the property. And he was like, no one lives here. No one lives here. And then the nuns were firing back. So what I'm saying is I think we're going to get instances like that too, where, multiple people at an address, people are going to go around and finger pointers. Who, you really live at this address? You don't? It's almost like people prying into people's lives. Stakes couldn't even be higher in this election. That's what they claim. They say this is the most pivotal election ever. Is it? Is it? Do you believe that there's stolen ballots out there? Do you believe that there's election fraud out there? Do you think it's going to happen? Maybe it didn't happen before, but do you think it would happen now? Do you believe in the mail-in? Do you trust the mail-in ballot process? Do you trust the election poll workers? The people that are working at the poll? Do you trust any of them? And all of them? Do you think this is going to be fair? Or do you think this is going to be foul? Or is it going to stink some corruption? Or is it all going to be legit? Do you think this is all going to go smoothly? Yeah, I'm not so sure. There's article after article after article talking about all types of fraudulent ballot schemes. Just in the last 24 hours. I'm sharing what I've seen. And we'll do this again in a couple days to see what happens over the weekend or next week or leading up to the election and even afterward. But just in the last 24 hours, there's all types of things going on. This is Mesa County, Arizona. What we know about the voter scheme in Mesa. Mesa County. What's going on with a voter scheme in Mesa? Around a dozen ballots in Mesa County were stolen from registered voters in the mail and submitted fraudulently. That was the title of the article. State officials, Mesa County, Colorado. And that goes along with what I'm going to show you. Mesa County. But there is an Arizona one. I'm going to show you the Arizona. Stolen ballots. Registered signature verification that can't verify whose signature are on these ballots. Whose signature are on these ballots? Are they really the person? Are they really the person? Is it that easy, folks, to take a ballot? Is it that easy to take a ballot and put somebody else's name on there if you have their social and DOB? How is it that we keep hearing about these ballots in batches arriving. And then when the person that collects the ballots reads these ballots and they see signatures that almost match with the same handwriting, how do we even believe that? And should we count it? What's the solution here? Maricopa County. There's the one I was looking for. Maricopa County. Maricopa County. Mesa County, Colorado. Maricopa County, Arizona. Fraudulent schemes. Elections. Ballots. So we got Maricopa County, Mesa County. Look at this. Ohio. There's so many of them. So many of them, you get confused. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost announces 6 voter fraud indictments 2 weeks from Election Day. 2 weeks from Election Day, and now we got indictments for voter fraud. See, it's here and there. It's different states. But think about the states here, particularly Arizona and Ohio. Those are like almost like battleground states. The margin of error are thin between the candidates. You know what I mean? Like if a candidate wins one state by 10,000 or 20,000 votes, every vote counts. Should count, right? But what about if people are just submitting these batches of fraudulent ballots? I'm not an expert in this. I'm just sharing what is going on in the last couple days. Attorney General David Yost announced 6 indictments for voter fraud stemming from referrals made by the Secretary of State. They're pursuing charges against some people. Ramesh Patel faces 1 count of illegal voting. Lorinda Miller faces 2 counts of illegal voting. Nicholas Fonte faces 1 count of illegal voting. Ahmad Aden and Van Thigh Cooper and Maria Del Harayo all face 1 count of illegal voting. Why would somebody vote illegally anyway? Like themselves? Is that a misunderstanding? Wasn't there one woman in Texas that got like 5 years for not allowed to vote, but she voted anyway? I think that's kind of ridiculous. You know, like your eligibility. If you're a legit citizen, but you didn't go through the process right to be eligible to vote, and then you vote, and then you get indicted by that, I think that's kind of slimy. The whole gist of this live is like people that are submitting other people's names and submitting fraudulent people and fictitious people, or submitting ballots on behalf of other people. Now that's right. That's a problem. That's a problem. Some people that didn't register to vote properly because they missed the deadline, they voted anyway and get indicted. I think that's kind of ridiculous. If they're American citizens, I think that's just ridiculous. But we're talking about some bigger stuff here, it looks like. Bigger things going on. So we got Maricopa County, Arizona, Mesa County. You got Ohio. You got Texas AG involved with this investigation of people supposed to be dropped off to register to vote. And we're talking about people most likely that are crossing the United States illegally, going to the DMVs to get the license. So get the license thing to go into, you know, and vote. You got Pennsylvania, Lancaster County. Now we have Colorado's Secretary of State. Same Secretary of State actually wanted to keep him off the ballot. Remember that? Didn't work. It's a big mess. It's a hot mess, folks. Voter fraud around the country going on. Here she is, Colorado.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Matt Crane, who is the Executive Director of the Colorado Clerks Association, for being here today. Yesterday, my office learned about a developing issue in Mesa County. We are here to tell you what we understand at this time, but it is a developing investigation. According to information that we gathered yesterday from the Mesa County Clerk's office, as of now, approximately a dozen voters in Mesa County had intercepted before they arrived to them and cast without their knowledge. Now, the ballots were filled out, the return envelopes were signed, and they were then returned to a USB box. So that's a postal box, not a ballot drop box. The issue was discovered during the signature verification process. At least 3 of the voters had already received communications from the Mesa County Clerk. Mesa County Clerk mailed 2 of the voters affected to ask them to cure their ballots, which means fix the signatures, because the signatures were rejected during the verification process. The voters subsequently reached out to Mesa County and told them they didn't actually vote their ballot or receive it. Other voters who had their ballots rejected because of the false signature would have also been sent that cure letter, but the ballots were intercepted in time. At least one other affected voter received a message through which is the statewide ballot tracking system, that sent a notification that their ballot was received by their county clerk. Again, the voter didn't actually receive their ballot and had not voted their ballot. None of these 3 voters had a ballot, and they reached out to the Mesa County Clerk. Mesa County Clerk Bobby Gross, her office then started an investigation. They discovered that ballots had been sent to addresses in close proximity to each other. Mesa County then looked at all the other ballots that were rejected because of the signature, and discovered that it appeared that at least some of the ballots were signed by the same person. The Mesa County Clerk's office then turned the findings over to Mesa County District Attorney Dan Rubenstein, who has initiated a criminal investigation. The team in Mesa County is re-examining every ballot return envelope that has been received at this point. The investigation into this situation is ongoing. What we also know is that Colorado's elections are safe and secure. And this attempt at fraud was found and investigated quickly because of the groundbreaking tools that we have here. Every return ballot undergoes signature verification in the state of Colorado, which is comparing the signature on the ballot return envelope to the signatures on file by the voter. Colorado also has ballot curing, where the county clerk will actually reach out to a voter if their ballot is rejected because their signature does not match. And we have tools like ballot tracks, where voters can sign up and get information sent to them from when their ballot was mailed to them to when it was received by the county clerk to when it is counted. These fraudulent ballots were rejected and flagged. A recent update from the Mesa County Clerk indicates that 4 made it through the initial round of signature verification. One of those was caught before it was counted because the voter had received a message through ballot tracks. Every voter impacted by the scheme that we are undercovering will have the opportunity to make their voice heard in the 2024 general election. Affected voters will be given a new ballot. Voter fraud, voter intimidation, and voter harassment are illegal in the state of Colorado. We will respond quickly to any attempts to disenfranchise voters or interfere with the Colorado election model. With that, I'll turn it over to Matt Crane, and then we'll take questions from everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's unfortunate that we have to get together for an event like this to talk about when somebody tries to do something nefarious with our voting systems. But as we've heard from Secretary Griswold, it's important to note that our processes here in Colorado did what they were supposed to do in terms of identifying potential fraud when it happens. And our clerk, Bobby Gross, and her team in Mesa County did a great job of following through on this to see what happened and working with DA Rubenstein in Mesa County to follow through and investigate this, which as the Secretary said, is still ongoing. But I just want to highlight, this shows the resiliency of our process here in Colorado, that if somebody tries to do nefarious things, it will be discovered through our processes. It's also a great sign that the voters took responsibility when they got that cure letter to reach out to the county to say, hey, we think there's a problem here. And so we always encourage personal responsibility with our voters as well. If you see something wrong, make sure you get in touch with the county so it can be investigated. I'd also like to highlight that this is just another opportunity for our clerks and our teams across the state to go back and review all of our processes, all of our signature verification work, all of our audit work, to make sure that we are dotting every I and crossing every T to make sure that things like this don't happen again. And heaven forbid, if it does, that we catch it and get it to law enforcement where they will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Perfect. With that, happy to take questions. Yep.
Do you have any suspects?
Suspects. Suspects. Who are the suspects?
I think more than one, and for the ballots, the way they were voted gives you an indication if the person or the subject or the suspect were voting one way or the other. If they voted for Trump or they voted for Harris.
So unfortunately, with the ongoing nature of the criminal investigation, I can't comment as to suspects, and we're just going to ask everybody to bear with us because we're not going to be speculating as to that and ask for patience. Of course, one thing to note, any voter that is concerned should go to govotecolorado.gov. You can sign up for ballot tracks right there and get a notification as to where your ballot is in the process, has it been voted, and that should be a good tool for folks. In terms of any of the political implications, I can't comment at this point, but as soon as we have information that we are able to release, we will be doing that.
A postal worker was involved.
I can't confirm that at this point.
The postal inspector.
The postal inspector?
Were they involved in this investigation?
The United States Postal Service has been alerted and has started their own investigation, as this is something that is related to the use of the Postal Service, but I can't comment further than that.
So at this point, you aren't looking at a postal worker or whether or not there's anybody in custody that is a postal worker?
I can't comment to that with the ongoing nature of the criminal investigation.
This sounds like 4 ballots made it through the signature verification process, and unless they had reached out, those 4 ballots would have been counted even though that person didn't vote. How can you say that that is the process working when they made it through the signature verification process?
Well, at this point, we have at least 12 ballots that are suspected. The county clerk discovered the issue relatively quickly and put processes in place to stop any further detriment. In terms of the signature process, signatures on the back of mail ballots are verified by an election judge. And if there's any questions as to the signature, then there's a secondary review by bipartisan election judges. We will be working very closely with Mesa County to make sure that their signature verification processes are as strong as possible going forward.
But in those 4 cases, didn't the process fail?
In those 4 cases, their 3 ballots were actually submitted and not pulled out. And that's unfortunate, but very luckily, this fraud was found early in the process in Mesa County and action was taken.
Does that mean that the votes were, those 3 were counted?
They were.
So they've been, is there a way to pull them back?
There is not. There is a confidential right, or there's a right under the state constitution to have a confidential ballot. So once signatures are checked, the ballot is pulled independently from the envelope and it's put into the process. Oh, on the Zoom, sure. Do you want to jump into this, Matt?
How many others slipped
No,
through the
I think
cracks?
you covered that well. I think we're always looking how we can improve our processes and make them stronger. But our processes identified this, and where there were ballots that, a certain number of ballots that got through, we have Mesa County's taking immediate actions to remediate that. And county clerks across the state are going through and dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that their processes, their security processes are as hardened as possible to make sure that things like this do not happen.
Let me just interject for a second. I know a lot of us know each other. Can everybody identify themselves and their outlet as they're asking questions?
So how were those 3 identified subsequently?
So the ballots went through. The clerk stopped processes and went back and checked the envelopes subsequently. So went back and checked the signatures and identified those as potentially being fraudulent. Mesa County is now working through every envelope that has already been processed to go and double check everything.
Are you able to address?
Can you identify yourself?
I'm Steve. Are you able to address how these were intercepted, where they were intercepted?
The ballots. They were intercepted through the signature verification process.
Where the fraudulent activity occurred, whoever's doing this, how did they get their hands on it?
I can't comment to that at this point. Yes.
When it comes to these dozen ballots, does it seem that there was a targeting of the people who were selected? Are there any connections there?
At this point, I can't comment onto that, but as soon as we have verifiable information, I'll be sure to share that with you.
Is this staged?
Somebody
Jack asked if we know anything about the location where they were intercepted from.
We can't answer. Everybody will have to have an ounce of patience. This is a criminal investigation, and so we can't comment to that at this point.
Mark Salinger with News again. Those 3 ballots that made it through, I know there was 4, one person reached out, it sounds like 3 of them were counted. I just want to make sure that we get this correct. 3 of them were counted, and you cannot reverse those votes. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
What?
At that point, one, how are you assuring people that this won't happen again, that Colorado's voting system is indeed secure? And 2, what happens to those 3 people? Can they vote again?
Yes. So everybody affected will be offered a new ballot. The Mesa County Clerk will be reaching out to all affected voters. Again, voters can always check their votes at govotecolorado.gov. We want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. Now, when it comes to the signature verification system, we have, of course, election rules and election law in place about signature verification. We will be working very closely with the Mesa County Clerk to ensure compliance with Colorado election rules. And just so you know, under election rules, it's required that clerks periodically audit the signature verification process and the people who are doing signature verification.
Is it possible that more ballots made it through that are fraudulent?
Yeah.
I can't comment to that right
Yeah.
now. What I can say is that the Mesa County Clerk is going through every signature that so far has been processed. This is an evolving situation, and we'll share as much as we know with the Mesa County Clerk's investigation, and of course as much as we are able to know with the criminal investigation ongoing. Yes, Jack?
Is there concerns about what's happening elsewhere in the state? How are you certain this is basically?
Who is that from? KOAA. Okay. Is there suspected fraud in other parts of the state? Not that we're aware of. We're investigating one other situation in the state that we don't have enough facts at this point to share. As soon as we have enough information, we'll be sure to share that with everybody. And I can't comment further as to whether this is a bigger scheme, given the criminal investigation and just the ongoing nature of the investigation in itself.
What's the timeline? Since your office learned about this the other day, when did folks in Mesa County learn about it? When did it go stolen?
So we were alerted yesterday morning. We are under the understanding that Mesa County knew the day prior to that. And in terms of the third part of your question, I can't comment now on that. Do you want to add anything else on that? You can jump in at any point. Okay.
Matt, I'd be interested from your perspective with county clerks. You say that this is the way that the system is supposed to work. Are fraudulent ballots supposed to make it through this process to be counted?
No, and I don't think I said it. I don't think I said it in the way that you're saying it. The system, the way that it works with our signature verification process, with our curing process, with all of these, with our ballot tracks process, is designed for both accessibility and security, right? To ballot tracks, so people can know that their ballot's on the way, have peace of mind, but also that's a big thing for peace of mind to them to know that it's on the way. The curing process to know, hey, there was an issue with your signature, you can come in and fix it. And also on the correspondence it says, if you didn't submit your ballot, let us know. So again, access and integrity at the same time. The signature verification process is designed to identify signatures that may not match. And if there's any question at all, the ballots are rejected and we notify the voters. So in that way, the way the system is designed, it is designed to catch things like this, which it did. Now, obviously, it is regrettable that 3 got through, which is why we have clerks across the state going back and revisiting all of their processes, all of their procedures, and having a zero tolerance policy for any mistakes that are made through the course of signature verification.
Can you talk a little bit about what that might look like right now? What have you told other county clerks to change within the past couple of days?
Well, it's not so much changing, it's going back and reviewing their training that they did with their election judges, going back and revisiting that with them, making sure they are doing the audit that Secretary Griswold referred to make sure they're validating how well the signature verification judges are performing, and just being really vigilant in terms of making sure everything is done by the book, and again, having a zero tolerance policy. If you see mistakes, assign that judge to another part of the election process. Do what you need to do, but we need the best of the best, the people who are best trained to do this work.
I would just add on, some of the rules have been amended to how signatures are audited just this year to increase the amount of oversight of the signature verification process. That's something that we are very focused on. It is very unfortunate that 3 ballots were counted, but this was caught relatively quickly. Like Matt said, we have signature verification, ballot tracking, the cure process where the county clerk is reaching out affirmatively to someone. We also have criminal prosecution, and that's what is happening right now. A criminal investigation has been opened. The district attorney in Mesa County, Dan Rubenstein, has started his investigation, and we're working very closely to support the criminal investigation into this situation.
I think if I could just add one thing too, I think like with all of our election processes, our statute, our law, our rules allows for meaningful observation of all of our processes. So signature verification, political party appointed watchers can go, or candidate appointed watchers can go and observe all of these processes that are happening in real time. So it's very open, it's very transparent, it's not done behind a closed door, and we welcome that. And we will work to get better to make sure that things like this don't happen again.
Just a clarification on the question. The clarification is that it was indeed the signature verification that exposed Mr. Lesnar. And you're treating these dozen or more alleged fraud instances of fraud as a single crime committed by a single person and not multiple crimes happening at once. And the question is, did the overcoming of the security prompt you or will it help you to assign some kind of supervision and
To clarify, I did not say that this was done by a single person. I can't comment on that at this point. We need to be very mindful of the criminal investigation. We are there to support Mesa County. We currently have staff in Mesa County on site to assist in any way. Yes.
Has this level of ballot interception ever happened to say that somebody was able to get their hands on ballots and then actually
Not to my knowledge. To your knowledge?
No, and I mean, I've been at this since 2000, and this is the first time that we've seen something like this.
I also wanted to speak to ballot tracks because it sounded like somebody signed up for that. They realized that they didn't have that ballot, or maybe they got a notification that their ballot had been voted, even though they haven't, actually seen it yet. Can you speak to the importance of ballot tracks and how it works in this situation?
Absolutely. So our system is based on check the signature and then alert voters if there's any type of suspected issue with a signature. Now, most of the time, we're alerting voters to say, like, hey, you signed your ballot too sloppy. You can't just write a line through. This is an actual signature that is being checked into a database of the voter signature. But the signature verification at its heart is to identify that the person who voted the ballot is the person who was intended to vote the ballot. So that's the first step, and then notifications go out to anybody where there's a question about their signature. So the process did work through that process, and then ballot tracks where a voter also got a notification that there was an issue with their ballot. The voters then called the county clerk, and it launched this investigation.
Can you talk a little bit about how the signature verification process works? Like,
Sure.
what actually happens when an election judge looks at the ballot? How do they determine if the signature matches?
Sure. So every time that someone votes a ballot, interacts with the DMV, their signature is put into a database that is then compared to how the signature is on the back of the envelope. Across the state, one election judge is looking at the signature initially. If there is any reason to suspect the signature has an issue, it is then escalated to a bipartisan team of election judges. And it's at that point a ballot would be held or rejected or held for cure, held for the voter to fix it because of some type of signature discrepancy.
Is it an
Interesting.
electronic comparison, or is it just somebody looking at two signatures and making kind of a layperson's determination?
Well, yes and no. Some counties do have an automated system. Mesa County does not. It's not just a layperson. There is a training. It's actually a training that was initially developed by Secretary Scott Gessler about how you do signature verification, that the county clerks take all their election judges that do signature verification through.
I think, yeah, if I might. So it's important to know there is extensive training around signature verification for every judge who does this work. That includes the state has a guide, as Secretary Griswold was talking about, that has different examples, what to look for, how a signature, even if it's off in the slightest way with a hook on a G or, something like that, things to look for in that regard. And then counties go above and beyond the state training often, where they will bring in a forensic handwriting expert to help them refine training materials to actually present to signature verification judges about things to look for, when examining these signatures. So there's a lot of training that takes place across the 64 counties. And then there are multiple layers of signature verification based on the process. Some larger counties have used technology as the first pass at signature verification. And then if it's referred, at that point, referred meaning the technology says it's not a match, then it goes to an election judge. If that judge refers it to the bipartisan team, so on and so forth. So there's multiple layers of this process. Extensive training before they ever work, auditing after the fact, and again, this process is open for meaningful observation to the public.
So it sounds like the ballots that did make it through made it through both the electronic automated
What a mess.
verification as well as any potential human verification.
I don't believe Mesa County uses the automatic signature verification software. I think it was completely manual, meaning a people process. Human process, right? Yep.
What a
Any
mess.
further questions?
Yeah, what a mess.
Obviously, there are going to be folks who point to this and say, like, clearly there's voter fraud in Colorado, and maybe try and extrapolate this to say that, how can you trust the results and say, what's your message to them?
Well, first off, I think we have to let the criminal investigation play out. We don't know the motives as to the person. But with that said, we can continually say disinformation is incredibly dangerous to the electoral process. Disinformation has incited actors to try to prove conspiracies in Colorado various times. And all over, we should really encourage folks to go to a trusted source of information. That's their county clerks, govotecolorado.gov. And I would say, it's unfortunate 3 ballots got through, but overall, this situation was addressed very quickly by the Mesa County clerk. There is a criminal investigation going on right now, and I do have faith that the district attorney in Mesa County, who has proven himself to be a very trustworthy partner in actual election integrity, will do a good job. So I think Coloradans can rest assured that this problem was caught very quickly, and it was addressed. Just like the Mesa County voting equipment breach, the compromise happened, and we caught it really quickly and addressed it. What we can do at the state level is make sure that the laws and the rules are as tight as possible for the counties. That's what we can do. We can assist the counties. We can offer them assisted county support, people from my office. We can bring in former clerks to help folks. We can do trainings. But at the end of the day, our system is done by humans. It's done by people who are overseeing the entire Colorado election model. I think 2 big things. We're going to continue to work very closely with the Mesa County clerk to ensure compliance with our election rules and law. But that also, the system did work. And we might not know full information to share with you all today, but there is a criminal investigation, and I'm very confident that justice will be had in this situation.
I want to step in and clarify one thing. Mesa County does use auto.
Oh, they do? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We're going to talk about this. I'm going to get Magnolia in the chat.
But they do have auto signature.
What a mess.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Just one of many examples, folks. Mesa County, Colorado. And keep your eyes on Maricopa County, because big things are probably going to be accused out of Maricopa County. What a mess. It seems like Mesa County's system there, how they process votes, is different than other counties. Every county has their own way to do things. Why isn't every county doing the same thing? She's talking about they have a system where whatever the signature is on your driver's license, it has to match what's on the ballot. And if it doesn't, it goes through a whole chain of command and everything. What a mess. What a mess. And was this just a fake acting here, as far as just like, hey, we're gonna just use a couple fraudulent as an example to give confidence that the elections are secure in Colorado? Was there something more to this? Was that like a smoke screen, smoke and mirror? And she said disinformation out there, and is inciting people to look into this matter. And I believe that's kind of true in a sense of all sides. All sides are pointing fingers, voter fraud. Both sides are saying voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud. And then instances of actual voter fraud come up, and then people want to sit there and try to uncover more, and it sends all these detectives, citizen detectives out there trying to find voter fraud, and going house to house, door to door, and finding everything and anything. And it could be the other side also planting ballots into fake ballots, the other side of so they can put out that rhetoric. It's wild stuff. I'm gonna get Magnolia in the chat. This is going to be a big story. This is going to be a big story. I feel like it's going to be big in the next couple weeks. And, my personal opinion about the elections is I think both candidates aren't going to accept the results. That's just my opinion on this. Again, we're not endorsing any candidate on JLR Investigates. I just feel like at the end of the day, if there's an election, which it looks like there is going to be an election, I think either candidate's not going to accept the results. It's just my opinion. What's yours? Hello, Magnolia.
Hello.
Okay, Magnolia. Good morning. All right, so what's your take on all this stolen ballots, voter fraud, ballot harvesting? You did some of this work in the past, right, with journalism, about looking into this type of stuff?
Yeah. So at Project Veritas, one of our main topics of investigations was voter fraud. So pretty much every time there was an election, we ran various ops where we were trying to expose voter fraud. One of the biggest ones was a few years ago. I think it was in 2018, maybe 2018 or 2020. We caught an election mercenary, a woman down in Texas, down in the San Antonio area, named Raquel Rodriguez. Now, she was actually running voter fraud schemes on both sides of the political spectrum. So she was running these voter fraud rings for Biden and also for Trump. And she was paying people for their votes. She was giving them gifts. And of course, we caught all that on camera. Well, she was getting paid by the candidate, by the campaign.
Which campaign?
So one of the campaigns that she worked for was a guy named Morrow. I forget his last name. He was a Republican candidate down there in the San Antonio area, and basically, and then she was also working for the Biden campaign locally, and so they would give her a huge amount of money to return votes for whatever the candidate was. And I don't even know who her preferred candidate was. I think she might have been a Trump supporter. It's hard to tell because she was doing this work for anyone who would pay her. So there's operations like that go on in the country. Well, she, we caught her on video and she was arrested. She went to prison. The Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, locked her up. But that was like a really random one that we found. And there was other stuff that, like we would go to the polls the day of voting and run these little operations where we would ask certain questions to see what the poll workers would say. Like one time, I was in Atlanta on election day, I think in 2018, and I went to the poll location, and I told this poll worker this story that my boyfriend was illegal and he was scared to come vote. And she was like, "Girl, you better get him down here and make him vote right now."
Interesting. What was the 28? Was that the midterms in 2018?
That was the midterms. Yep, that was in 2018. So we had several instances of that where they would encourage illegals to vote.
You specifically said an illegal. You specifically
that
said,
was
"Hey, my
my-
boyfriend's an illegal."
That was my script. Yeah, that was my assignment. My boyfriend is an illegal. He's undocumented. Well, I think I said undocumented. He's undocumented. He really wants to vote, but he's scared he's going to get in trouble. And she was like, "Girl, you better get him down here before the polls close." And that happened repeatedly. Little scenarios like that. We had instances where I'm sure people have seen some of these. James O'Keefe would go in and obtain the ballot of other people. So some of the more infamous ones, he got the ballot for Marshall Mathers.
Eminem.
Yeah. In Michigan. He went in there and he said his name was Marshall Mathers, and they looked up Marshall Mathers on the list and handed him the ballot. And he did it with Eric Holder. I think he got some heat and some backlash on that one, but so we just always tried to show what was going on, and really the lack of security with voting integrity. So I think it's gotten worse though over time, because it used to be the biggest issue was no ID required. That used to be the big issue, and that's how come James was able to go and get different people's ballots. But I think the bigger issue has now shifted to these mail-in ballots. They're just everywhere now, and it's like, I remember in 2020 there were certain states that were sending mail-in ballots to every single person on the voter roll, whether they requested it or not. So people were just getting these ballots. And so what you ended up having was, someone might live in an apartment, and the next thing they know, they're getting 10 ballots to their apartment in their own name, and all the people who used to live there, those names. So you see a lot of that too with the mail-in ballots, because the mail-in ballots, they're just sending those out to whatever the address is on file. When people could move, they may live in another state now, but they're still sending the ballots.
Who is sending them? Who is sending them? The supervisor's election for that county?
Yeah, it was decided during 2020 that many states would send out these ballots because of COVID. So that people could vote by mail instead of coming in person if they were afraid of COVID, So there were certain states that just did these blanket mail-in ballots to everyone on their voter rolls. So I think Pennsylvania might have been one of them. But, we've seen stories of people. There was even someone in our chat that said she got like 10 ballots to her house this year.
And what, because of the 10 previous people that lived at the address, like the turnover of that address, and a lot of people lived there previously?
Yeah, I think several were in her own name, but I'm not sure. But we hear a lot of stories like that they're getting these ballots in other people's names. But also the other issue besides the mail-in ballots is the ballot harvesting, which is legal in places like California. You're allowed to go around and collect people's ballots in batches and then drop them off.
On behalf of somebody else.
Yeah, and you don't have to be, in some places, you don't have to be even related to the person. In some states, ballot harvesting is only allowed if it's like your family member, if you wanted to vote and I went in and turned in your vote for you. Some states you're allowed to do that, but then other states you can just turn in ballots for whoever. The other thing you mentioned was these addresses. So one thing that we found, I think in 2020, there was a place in Atlanta that was like a homeless shelter. It was like a soup kitchen, homeless shelter type facility. And we found out that there were like hundreds and hundreds of people registered to vote using that address, but they didn't actually live there.
So that's another thing that happens. I don't know. I saw Jenna Griswold's press conference, and I heard her talk about the different measures they have in place with signature verification and things like that. But to me, it just sounds really flimsy. It's, for one thing, signature verification it seems very flimsy. It's like,
well, that's also a mechanism for them to reject ballots too, by saying, well, your signature's not necessary. You have one little loop off your, I mean, sometimes I write, my own, like when I sign documents, I'm not signing my same exact figure signature every single document. Sometimes it's off a little bit depending on my mood.
Right. And then if you were to compare two signatures, that's very subjective. I doubt that these poll workers that are checking signatures are handwriting experts. I could be wrong, but I seriously doubt that these people are handwriting experts and have the expertise to compare signatures.
Well, first off,
I think that's just very subjective.
They see the ballot, and the poll workers, or whoever the ones that are processing the ballots, might see like who they're voting for, and then might just that's a signature on match, put it to the side.
Right. Yeah. And that could be happening too.
Like proper, ballots aren't getting processed because of the so-called signature doesn't match.
Mm-hmm.
So the overall, on either side, it's just ripe for abuse. It's ripe for fraud, uncertainty, unknowns. It's a mess, Magnolia.
There's just ballots everywhere. It seems like there's just ballots everywhere now.
Well,
you have these drop boxes. The drop boxes were a big controversy in 2020, I remember, because, again, with the ballot harvesting, you'd have one individual go to a ballot box and drop off hundreds of ballots at once. We had that. I forgot about, we also had that in Minnesota, the Somali community. They had a sophisticated voter fraud operation going up there that we exposed. These were Somali immigrants, and the people running the voter fraud rings would go to these apartment complexes where a lot of Somali immigrants were living, and they would literally go door to door and ask them for their ballot and give them money for their ballot.
Money for ballots?
And just really,
how much?
Just really taking
$20?
It would be like $50 to $100, $200 sometimes. They'd give them cash. So, that's just taking advantage of those people because they're immigrants and they may not understand that this isn't proper, you know what I mean? But they might need the money, and so they'll take the money and give up their ballot. But that was happening too. So and then there's also nursing homes get taken advantage of too, where people go in and say, oh, I'm going to help you fill out your ballot, and they collect all the elderly ballots and then fill them out and send them in.
Well, how about not only helping, but I'm going to tell you who to vote for because your mind's not necessarily there in a nursing home, and here's who you should vote for, and let me handle it for you.
Yeah, so you get a lot of this. I think it's abuse personally to take advantage of an elderly person, but that's what they do. They take advantage of people that are maybe they're immigrants or maybe they're elderly and they need assistance, things like that. It's kind of gross, but it does go on.
Magnolia, I think this is going to be a huge topic and a huge controversy in the making. Again, I've read off multiple states just in the last couple of days. Mesa here, Maricopa. There's always allegations. Maricopa is going to probably be one of the top counties that we're going to hear about. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Maricopa in Arizona.
There's always hijinks going on in Maricopa, it seems like.
Now we got Lancaster County officials coming out. And then I showed an example of nuns being accused of voter fraud because a bunch of nuns were at one particular address, and you got the opposition, a GOP operative, going there saying, oh, there's a bunch of people here, nobody here, and the nuns are coming out saying that we live here. And that's what we'll probably get to, a lot of finger pointing, right? Accusations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Across the board. It's scary stuff. Prosecution, will they really prosecute people for this? Is it organized? Is it not organized? I can't see how just a regular average Joe person just says, "Oh, I'm just going to commit voter fraud." What skin do they have in the game, to submit other people's names? Like, what skin in the game do they have? They must be working with somebody.
Yeah, I mean, voter fraud, a lot of people are like, oh, voter fraud's not real, but it's very real. Lots of people, every election season, get arrested for voter fraud. There's plenty of stories out there about it, and it happens on both sides. I remember a few years ago in North Carolina, there was a GOP voter fraud scam that was exposed, and they actually redid the election as a result. So it happens on both sides. I think it's completely ridiculous. I think these people have way too much time on their hands to be doing all this. It's just, it's a felony. So, people do go to prison for this. And we had someone arrested and sent to prison. So it happens all over.
Yeah, but with this, I just have a feeling, my prediction that, and we discussed this before, I just feel like whatever the outcome is happens in the next couple weeks or beyond, who knows when there'll actually be an outcome, I think either side's going to claim voter fraud. I really do. In some sort of sense, something, either poll stations weren't done right, poll stations were blocking people from votes, or the mail-in ballot votes, or the harvesting. There'll just be accusations on both sides.
Yeah, and I think the Colorado thing was interesting. The press conference we played with that Secretary of State, because she's the very person who tried to keep Trump off the ballot. Remember, they fought tooth and nail to not allow him to be on the ballot, and they failed at that. But they really, really tried hard they made the decision to not let him be on the ballot. And then wasn't it like the Supreme Court stepped in and they even tried to fight back against that? But ultimately they lost that, and he's on the ballot there in Colorado. But I just think it's interesting that they did all those things to kind of manufacture the ballot a certain way, and now they're super concerned about voter fraud. I just think that's interesting.
Now, what could be people always say, their solutions I hear on the Trump side is, same-day voting and vote with an ID. Would that stop? But, think about this. People that could get fraudulent IDs, too. To go, the whole process of getting fraudulent IDs, it seems like some states giving IDs to anybody. So, that's not necessarily the solution to me, right? When anyone can get IDs in certain states.
Yeah, and we've covered the fact that the people that are on TPS, the temporary protected status, essentially they're refugees. They're coming in, they're working right away, and they're able to go get their driver's license too, like the Haitians in Ohio that we covered. So yeah, I don't know how that would help, but some people have been calling for paper ballots, in-person voting across the board, and there's certain election integrity organizations that do a lot of work to try to get that implemented in different states. But I think for the most part, they're using the machines, and this mail-in ballots has become really, really prevalent.
Yeah, but mail-in ballots are paper ballots, right? No? Mail-in ballots, they're paper ballots, right?
Yeah.
While some states use machines. What I'm saying by this, it seems like every state and every county and every state within the state has different mechanisms and ways to do this. It seems like no one's clearly on board on the same page here with processes.
Every state's different. Every state has their own different rules.
And not only the state, but counties within the state. It seems like they're not all on the same page.
Right, yeah. And you could go within the same county, precinct to precinct, and they could have different
Wait,
structures set up.
but because that's the way I kind of heard it with the Secretary of State Griswold with Colorado. She was like, Mesa County, the way they were doing things is different than other counties in that state. So
Yeah.
why can't every state, since we're the United States of America, get on board and do one set process and one set process only? Why does it have to be like different states have different voting machines, like companies, and different states have different ways to do things? Why can't every state just be on the same page here?
Well, you would have to have the federal government take over voting procedures, and
Do you think they
would
think
have
they
to
should?
do it. They would have to do it at the federal level.
Or do you think this goes back
as
to
it is
states'
now.
rights?
Yeah, as it is now, the individual states are able to do it how they see fit. So I don't know if having the federal government take it over is the answer either.
Well, a lot of people don't want anything on the federal level. They want the states to decide.
Yeah.
So if the states have different rules, and every state, has a different person that runs it, whatever political side, and it's I just think it's just a complete dumpster fire.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that so many people are now doing the mail-in ballots, because I don't know. I've always thought that was so strange, but I know my cousin and her husband in California, they've voted by mail for years, like forever. That's just how they do it. They get the ballot in the mail, they fill it out, and then they mail it back. Me, I wouldn't trust. I don't know. I just wouldn't trust that my ballot actually got to the place. I would be one of those people that's like constantly checking online to see if my ballot was received. I'd be sitting there like refreshing the screen, refresh. Did it work? Did it work? Did they get my vote? I couldn't do that. I don't know. But a lot of people are now doing it.
Interesting. I didn't know you could track it all like that.
Yeah, well, that was a real big thing in 2020 where.
But nobody does it though. Nobody tracks their own votes.
Yeah, they did.
They do.
In 2020. Yes. You don't understand. After the 2020 election, we got at Project Veritas, we got somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 tips about voter fraud in about 5 days' time after the election. It was so much that the entire company we had to stop everything else we were working on, and we all were assigned to go through the tips that were coming in through email, the phone calls, social media. It was overwhelming. It was completely insane. And that's all we did for like 2 weeks after the election was go through all these tips. And one of the main things that people were saying is they voted by mail and they checked the status of their ballot and it was never received. We got thousands like that. The other thing that was a big deal in 2020, I don't know if people remember this, but Sharpie Gate was overwhelming. That was the vast majority of the tips we got, and they were mainly coming out of Arizona, but it was other states too. Our Pennsylvania, we had a lot, and then randomly we would have like Vermont, a whole bunch of people from Vermont. So they were saying basically that they went in to vote on voting day and they were given a Sharpie to fill out their ballot. Now apparently if you use a Sharpie, it can bleed through, it can cause erroneous marks or whatever, so they get rejected. So you fill out the ballot by hand. It's supposed to be with a pen, but a lot of people said they were given a Sharpie, and when the ballot gets put in the machine, it would be rejected. So we had thousands and thousands and thousands of people writing in about Sharpie Gate. I thought I was going to go insane at another Sharpie spree.
Sharpie Gate.
they were alleging that they were doing this only on election day. They said other people who went in person and voted early were given a pen, but on election day in certain counties and certain polling centers, they were being given Sharpies. And so the conspiracy idea was that was supposed to target Trump voters who typically vote in person on election day. But yeah, we had thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of those.
And guess what? It seems like that Sharpie Gate was mostly in Arizona.
Maricopa was a big, yeah, that was a big one. And then, like I said, there were other states. It wasn't just Arizona. There were many other states where we got these tips from. But it was mainly out of Maricopa, yeah.
Sharpie Gate. What other gate is there going to be? What gate is there going to be in the next couple of weeks? Remains to be seen.
No, I hope we don't go down the Sharpie route again this time, because I'll lose my mind.
Yeah, we'll continue to cover these, stolen ballot allegations, arrests, if any any networks or individuals get out there. I'm looking across the board, but those are the primary states that I mentioned that seems like in the last 24 hours, 48 hours that have issues, and it seems like it's multiple states. I'm sure there'll be other states that will be coming out in the next couple days or in the next few weeks. Do you agree? We'll hear more?
Oh, yeah, we'll hear lots about. This is going to be a topic, and that's kind of why we decided to cover it, because the election is the biggest thing happening right now in the country, and we keep seeing these stories pop up left and right, and I think that it's going to be a continuing thing. Just like you said, after the election, are they going to accept the results, and then what happens after that? So B in the chat said that they were given a Sharpie in 2020, and now they're taking their own pen this year.
Oh wow, yeah, taking your own pen. But yeah, again, I don't know if voter ID is the solution here alone. Again, because people could get fraudulent IDs. It seems like people in some states, the DMVs, just give anyone IDs nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess some people even go as far as to say don't have elections anymore, but I won't say that. I think, our whole country is based off elections, but should you even trust elections anymore?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a big thing too. People have conversations about that. What is the solution here to prevent stolen ballots, ballot harvesting? If some people think it's legit and is legal, and some people say it's not, just all this whole mess. Like, what is the solution?
It just, across the board, just overall, it seems like it's just voting in general. It's just so loosey-goosey now. I wish we were still back in the days where the only complaint people had was voter ID and paper ballots. I wish that was the only issue we have. But now, with these ubiquitous mail-in ballots that are just everywhere now, I find it hard to believe that can be tracked accurately. Like I said, people move, people, may not update their information. They're inactive on the voter rolls, but they're kept on the voter rolls for years and years and years. You even had the Biden administration recently. They sued 2 states. One of them was Virginia, because Virginia purged their voter rolls of all undocumented immigrants of registered to vote. They purged all those off their voter rolls, and the Biden administration sued them for that.
Whoa.
So that's another interesting choice. I feel like if each state should be cleaning up their voter rolls on a regular basis, but unfortunately, a lot of states don't do it, or they may have these invalid, inactive, dead voters. People who have died are still on the voter rolls, which is a whole other layer of this. But voter fraud, it's kind of like its own little industry. There's some of the schemes and the scams that I've heard of are just things that you would never even fathom. Some of these scams that they run are so complicated and convoluted that it's like, who even thinks of that? Like, I remember hearing about various voter fraud operations in the news, and I would read these stories and be like, who even thinks up something like this? Who has time to sit here and think up such a complicated scam for voting? Like, they don't have anything else to do, or what? I mean, I wouldn't have time to do that.
What about these things I'm hearing about busing people to the lines and giving people food in the lines to vote? I mean, do you know anything about that? Is that big, or is that nothing of nothing? Or is that another one?
Well, it's not allowed. You're not allowed to give food or anything to people, to voters in line. That's not allowed.
Or what about some sort of election officials, at the doors, giving people telling people, who to vote for, or sometimes signage really close on stations.
Well, I personally rode on one of those buses myself one time in Atlanta. Yeah, sometimes what they do is they'll have like a church, for example, and the church will use their vans to go pick people up and take them to the polls. And there was one in particular in Atlanta. Me and another girl, we went to one of the pickup spots, which was at an apartment complex, and we got on the bus. So we rode the bus to the poll, and kind of poked around and see what was going on. But yeah, the buses are a thing. The intent for the buses is to help people who don't have transportation, people that don't have cars, or elderly people that need assistance getting to the polls. That's the idea behind those buses. But I think in a lot of cases they are, doing fraudulent things. Like in what was the state? I think in Michigan. We had a real big voter investigation way back in 2016, and the guy, one of these political operatives that we had on video, he said straight out of his mouth, "Yeah, we bus people in. We've been doing it for years, and we're going to keep doing it."
Bus people in from where? Where they get on the bus? At the church?
So the allegation is that they pick people. What they do, this is the allegation, that they put people on these buses. They'll pick up a group of people. They'll put them on a bus, take them to a polling station. They vote, get back on the bus. The bus goes to another polling station, and they vote at that polling station. And sometimes they could be crossing county lines. Sometimes they could even be crossing state lines. But they don't. A lot of times, people always talk about these buses, but a lot of times it's not actually a bus. Sometimes it's a fleet of rental cars, so that they're not suspicious. Sometimes these organizations will literally rent an entire fleet of rental cars, and that's what they use to bus these people around. So that's the allegation, and I think it's more prevalent in certain places than it is in others. I don't think that goes on everywhere, but it definitely goes on in certain places.
Crazy stuff, all these schemes and weird things, for sure. I mean, we'll continue to monitor it. We'll continue to bring out the people that get accused of this type of stuff, and we'll monitor and see what happens this year with this. I'm sure we'll be back on live tomorrow or something talking about it.
Yeah. I think these stories will be popping up left and right.
Should I send you undercover to a polling station or something like that with a wig?
I think those days are over.
Yeah, interesting.
My opinion on the other undercover stuff was, the whole time I was at Project Veritas, we primarily did undercover investigations. Not always, but most of it was undercover. But something that I learned over the years is you don't necessarily have to go undercover to find the truth. You and I are proof of that. Like down on the border, I still see James O'Keefe running his scams all over the place, instigating things with Border Patrol agents and all this kind of stuff, trying to catch people and gotcha moments and different things. But, you and I go to the border and we see a Border Patrol agent, and what do? We say hello, we talk to them, ask them what's going on, and 9 times out of 10, they tell us. They just tell us because they want the truth out there. So you don't, in my opinion, you don't really have to do the undercover stuff. I think it's, in some case, it's something I feel is reserved for the last resort. If that's the only way you can get the truth, then it's needed. But I think in most cases it's not needed, and I feel like our border coverage and different things we've done just proves that.
Speaking of border, we were thinking about going back. Plus, you just contacted we'll call them friends that own property on the border, on the border. And what did they just tell you the other day via text?
Yeah, she said they're still getting in. They're still getting about 100 coming through every day. Every day, she said,
through their backyard.
She also said that a lot of them are actually gotaways. Previously, most of those people that were coming in there through Hakumba were going straight to the Border Patrol sites that they had set up so they could go right there and be processed. But this homeowner said that that's kind of changed a little bit. She said now they're hiding. Most of the ones that are coming through are hiding from Border Patrol.
Yeah, we might go check out again. All right, folks. Anything else, Magnolia? Great work, as usual.
Nope. We'll just keep our eyes peeled.
Thanks for the conversation.
All right, thanks.
She has to educate me a little bit stuff, because this stuff is all a cloud of confusion of what's legit and what's not. Happening all across the country, folks. Stolen ballots. Are we going to have election fraud this year? I'm not saying there's election fraud, but, it seems like it's starting, things are starting to be put into place to have that narrative in a couple weeks. We'll know in a couple weeks. Let's see in a couple weeks. Let's see what's said and what's done and what gets uncovered and what doesn't. Or is this going to go just smooth sailing and whoever wins the election and we go about our daily lives as Americans or people, from around the world that watch JLR Investigate, sees what goes on in America? Is it going to be smooth sailing, or are we going to have some problems here? Already it seems like allegations of fraud, dumping ballots, signatures that don't verify. So yikes. We'll see. I'll keep you informed. All right, folks, we cover, that's true crime, right? True crime. We cover true crime 24/7, 365, reporting from the JLR Batcave in Western Florida. Maybe we'll go around to polling stations. Maybe I'll go around polling. Maybe I'll go undercover with a little mustache and a hood. And we go investigate, right? Hidden cameras. Should I get hidden cameras and go around and investigate and see what's going on? Maybe. You never know. Maybe we'll get into that. We cover true crime 24/7, 365. Thank you, members. Thank you, everyone, for the support. We'll talk soon. JLR Magnolia Investigates. Have a good morning, everyone. Be safe.